Well, and you know, that's well said and positioned. What you and I have been trying to do for almost a decade now is trying to create an environment in which, one, the student, because that's been our most direct contact, is exposed to some of these truths, some of these realities, and knowing that you bring to the table, I bring to the table, this certain set of biases that we all have. But what we I think we've been very good at doing is looking at people and giving them the threads, the pathways, the opportunity to better understand one themselves, and then also to be able to reflect upon those people with whom they have interacted from a leadership standpoint. And as you know, it's an ongoing process. It never ends. Never ends.
That's right. And again, this isn't something that is taught in MBA programs necessarily. And I think that you know, part of this idea is the issue of power. You know, power is something that is, you know, glorified in the media, on television, and you know, position, that type of thing. And I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with position, you know, or power. But it can also be intoxicating. And it's very, very important that we don't find ourselves adopting some of those characteristics that we read about from the emperor. You know, right. and I think that it's very likely, I don't think any of us are immune to the possibility of constructing a universe that really, really suits us, or one in which we feel really comfortable. And I think that there are a lot of reasons why people do that. I think that, as we talked about before, you know, some people create a universe where they're protected. You know, we've worked with some leaders in the past that don't like conflict. And so in their organizational universe, as a solipsist, they create a world where everybody is just happy and content and satisfied. That may or may not be the case, as you know.
Right.
There are other leaders who have a fear of vulnerability, and they may construct an environment where there are restrictions on, you know, how people communicate, or the way in which they communicate, to address that. And in many situations, leaders surround themselves with others who really reinforce that constructed reality. And in many cases, there are casualties that come as a result of that, because there's a major distortion between what is happening and what is, you know, being believed. Yes.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, the battlefield is strewn with bodies of individuals, students, teachers, ministers, CFOs, COOs, individuals, whether they're direct contact with the client or the customer, all the way across the board, simply because of this whole atmosphere that has been created around a power structure that sort of focuses on one individual or a very small group of individuals. And as you well know, in analyzing the behavior and the life of organizations, and you go in to see how healthy they are, we have found that there is always the most unhealthy organizations we've dealt with have been those in which there was a disconnect between the reality or the truth of the leader and that of the people either working with or being served by that leader.
That's right. And let's think about this. I mean, as I said before, I don't think anybody is immune to the intoxicating effects of power and position. You know, it's something that there are responsibilities that come with being in a position of authority in an organization. So let's talk practically about some things that a leader can do to ensure that he or she does not become a solipsist, that does not become a quasi-emperor that we read about. You know, I think that, you know, as you mentioned early on, there are multiple examples historically where people maybe started out with great intentions, and for a variety of reasons, they constructed a universe that ended up costing many lives, either psychologically or mortally. And I think that there's some things that we can do as leaders to ensure that that doesn't happen to us. And one of the things that I found, I'm reading things today more than I normally would, but Plato, 2,500 years ago, said this.
Okay.
He said, "Since ancient times, understanding the complexity of the self has been lauded as a worthwhile and necessary aspiration." In his Phaedrus, he writes, I must first know myself, as the Delphian inscription says, to be curious about which is not my concern, while I am still in ignorance of my own self, would be ridiculous. Am I a monster more complicated and swollen with passion than the serpent Typhon, or a creature of a gentler and simpler sort, to whom nature has given a diviner and lowlier destiny? That's what Plato said. He was basically saying, self-awareness is pretty important.
Yeah.
And I think that our work over the years confirms that, both from what we've read and researched, and also in organizations.
Well, I think that bringing that forward, a little bit. We know that the whole concept of emotional intelligence, and we've referred to this in previous programs, and the importance of knowing yourself, because we see ourselves at from an emotional intelligence standpoint, we're talking about our own personal competencies, and then we're also talking about our social competencies and how we manage that. And all of the recent research, and I mean of the last 15 to 25 years in particular, has talked about the importance of this, Tony, about the leader understanding who she is or who he is, and what is their level of competency. The one beautiful thing about emotional intelligence is the fact that you can change that. There's flexibility there, because you can hone in on specific sets of issues or concerns or opportunities that you may not be able to do with one's intellectual or IQ.
So I think what you're saying is, self-awareness is very important.
It's central.
Central.
And
which is one of the key components of emotional intelligence.
That's right.
Another thing that I think is very important, and one thing that we did not see in the story of The Emperor's New Clothes, is the importance of, or the presence of honest feedback. Surrounding oneself with people, that will strengthen you, that may reinforce you, but will also, sort of hold that mirror up in a way that's, of course, hopefully respectful, but also will be honest, provide honest feedback. There's that concept of a yes man or a yes woman. An effective leader is not going to get real far with people that don't, talk or present reality.
Leaders that are insular in their environment ultimately are going to lead you in the wrong direction or the wrong pathway. And it is a serious disease in our culture. It's a serious disease worldwide. And I think you and I are here to help point, maybe open some doors and some windows and some thoughts that maybe many of the viewers that do see the show would never have even thought about going down that pathway.
So I'd say to you, as a viewer, are you leading naked? Are you like the Emperor? Have you surrounded yourself with people who affirm you but never raise difficult questions? I think that's a really important question that we should ask. And of course, Doug, we're out of time. I'd like to thank you for joining us for The Reflective Leader. We'll be back again in a few weeks. Thanks again.